Thank you, everyone, for joining us at Legal Aid of Southeastern Pennsylvania's 20-plus anniversary. I'm so honored to be joined today by our first executive directors, Harvey Strauss and Liz Fritsch, and we're going to talk a little bit about how this all came together, how LASP came to be. Welcome, Harvey and Liz. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's just start out. Harvey, how did you make legal aid your professional choice? How did you become a legal aid lawyer?
Well, when I was in law school, I did a clinical program. I really enjoyed it. And I decided I wanted to get into legal aid or a public defender situation, something like that. So I was fortunate. My first job was with legal aid in Utica, New York. Shortly after that, I went to the old Legal Aid Society. A couple years after that, I came to what was the Montgomery County Legal Aid Service. So that's how I got into it. And I came to Norristown in 1976.
How about you, Liz?
Well, being a child of the 60s and early 70s, I thought I could change the world and considered social work, psychology. My dad was an attorney, loved the law. I found out later that he was one of the founding members of Bucks County Legal Aid. So he persuaded me that the law was the way to change the world and make things better. So I headed off to law school with that in mind and found my way back to legal aid after doing some volunteering, found my way into the employment of legal aid much later in life, but felt that I belonged there when I got there.
How would you all sort of describe your programs before the merger? Harvey, you in Montgomery County, and Liz, you in Bucks County. What comes to mind when you think of what the programs were before the merger?
Our program was quite small. When I came in 1976, there was a director then, and I was the staff attorney, and there was a secretary and a half. It was a program that had been started by the Bar Association. There were hundreds of volunteer attorneys. And when we got state and federal money in the late 1970s, we expanded. We opened an office in Pottstown. We had an office in Willow Grove for a little while, and we grew to about 20 staff, maybe 10, 11 attorneys. The key thing in those days was local funding, support from the bar associations, a lot of pro bono help from the private bar. And we survived and in fact, kind of flowered until the time when the merger talks began. But we were a small one county program.
And what kind of cases did you all focus on?
The overwhelming majority of our cases in those days was family law, custody, visitation, domestic violence, children and youth cases, a lot of landlord and tenant, a lot of housing, some consumer work, some SSI, SSD, unemployment compensation. That was probably the majority of the types of cases we did. Again, because we didn't have a very big staff. So we did kind of what in those days I think was considered the core area of legal aid work.
Liz, I'll ask you the same questions.
Like Montgomery County, we were a very small program. I think we were very, focused on local issues. We had an excellent staff, but we're very restrained by our size. Depended very much on our local bar association, which was very supportive, and a lot of pro bono attorneys. And we really didn't have that much contact with the other legal service programs in the other 3 suburban counties. It's surprising to think back about how little we really spoke to one another until we came to the years leading up to the merger.
So talk about the merger some. I know it was not always a smooth road, but what were some highlights for you all in terms of how the programs came together?
I think one of, the merger, as Liz mentioned earlier, It was tough. It was a process that took a couple years. We hired a consultant, Gary Singson, who had been an officer at the Legal Services Corporation. We had the pro bono help on all the legal issues from Ballard Spar, who just were incredible. We had mediation help from Lou Ruley at the University of Pennsylvania. It was a long, involved process, and I think most of the local programs, I speak mostly for Montgomery County, were a little reticent about the idea of merger. But we fought through the process. We had lots of resources, lots of meetings. As you all know, we eventually went to mediation led by Lou Ruley. And after 2 years, we finally decided to merge. And looking back, I think it was an extraordinary process, draining, politically charged at times, but we wound up with a really good merged 4-county, now middle-sized program with quite a few resources, great staff, because we were able to keep most of the staff of the 4 small programs. And I think in those days, we were pretty excited about LASP. We were pretty enthusiastic about the fact that we were going to be able to do not only what we'd always done, but get into some new areas. And it was a successful process. I looked at other mergers, and I always thought ours was one of the most successful in the country.
Liz, anything to add?
I do think there were individuals from each of the 4 counties who were instrumental in bringing their county to the table. I think once we all realized that merger was going to be in our best interest, that was the way to hold on to federal and state funding, which was becoming increasingly important and available to us, that we sat down and got the job done. And thank goodness we had strong participation from the bar associations, because our greatest fear was that the bar associations would not support a regional program. And fortunately, that turned out to be an unfounded fear. The 4 bar associations did support the merger and really made it successful. Of course, it didn't hurt that we had an excellent staff from in each of the 4 counties, and we were able to hold on to almost all of them, and they made the program as successful as it was.
Yeah, if I could just mention, Shawn, I think some of the individuals who were most important to us were the 4 executive directors of the local bar associations. In those days, Nancy Paul, Wendy Hoffman, the late Betty Price, the director in Bucks County. They and the officers of those 4 bar associations bought into the merger. And I think that they, with some of the local political leaders like the late Senator Greenleaf, some of the other people, really made it a difficult process somewhat easier, because we knew we had the support of the 4 local legal communities.
Well, I know we're running short on time, but what do you all see as, in a nutshell, your proudest innovations or achievements as executive directors here?
Again, I think the success of the merger was extraordinary. It was an incredibly difficult process. We got through it. We kept most of the staff of the 4 local programs. We were worried about losing local funding, and we had a lot of local funding in those days. We didn't lose any local funding, or very little. We were successful with the help of our resource development people in getting new funding pretty quickly. I think we gained credibility with the Legal Services Corporation, the Pennsylvania Legal Aid Network, IALTA, the 4 bars, Pennsylvania Bar Association. I was just proud of us operating, I guess in those days, 6 offices, 50 or 60 staff, serving over 10,000 people a year. I think the fact that we survived and thrived in those early years was something that I was quite proud of.
Liz, I'm going to give you the last word.
Well, I do think that we didn't realize what advantages our increased size and regionalization was going to give us. It allowed us to apply for foundation funding that we never could have gotten when we were small programs. It gave us a depth of staff, which I think was invaluable. Instead of having one attorney doing property-related work, we had 4 experts in 4 counties who were able to share best practices with one another and to stand in for one another. So I think the depth and richness of expertise and experience the merger gave us was wonderful. It allowed us, of course, to strengthen the helpline, which has continued to be one of our greatest assets. And it just gave us the capacity to do things that we did not have before. And I think that's been a wonderful strength. We've been able to attract excellent staff, hold on to wonderful advocates. And so it really did turn out to be a great decision, a great merger, and it goes forward and becomes better with every year. And thanks to Shawn's guidance and Keisha along with him, and Eric and so many others. And the Bar Association support has continued to grow. I was just at a meeting this morning, a legislative breakfast, and legal aid was a subject of conversation. It was wonderful to hear. So I think the merger was very successful, and I look forward to hearing more about its accomplishments with the coming years.
Well, thank you again, Harvey and Liz, for joining us and sharing these insights. You certainly created a strong foundation for where we are today with LASP, and we look forward to a bright future with continued innovations and improvements to serve our clients in the 4 counties. I want to give special thanks to our sponsors tonight. Your generosity was really heartwarming and amazing. It enabled us to put on this great event. And I thank everyone for attending. Members of the bar, our friends in the judiciary and the legal services community, we thank you so much for your support over the years. And we look forward to another successful 20 years with LASP. Thank you.